welcome back this evening. Take a slow breath in and an even slower one out, and let everything you carried through the day start to loosen its grip. Wherever you are, let your shoulders sink, let your jaw unclench, and let your eyes grow a little heavier with each moment. Tonight, we are wandering somewhere a bit more hidden, a place that feels like it has been dreaming for a very long time, quietly growing in the dark while no one was watching. A forgotten greenhouse, overgrown and unattended, where the light does not seem to follow ordinary rules and the plants have quietly made their own. You do not need to do anything except listen and drift. Let the story move at its own slow pace, and let your thoughts follow only as far as they want to before they soften and fade. When you are ready, we can step into the overgrown path together and see what the night has been keeping there. I found the greenhouse at a time of night when paths aren't supposed to lead anywhere new. The trail I followed was already quiet and narrow, a faint line between dark trees, the kind that feels like it belongs more to small animals than people. The only sounds were the soft crunch of my steps and distant insects carrying on with their nighttime routines. I didn't have anywhere to be. I was just walking to let my thoughts loosen a bit. Then, through the trees, a faint glow appeared, low, soft, and not shaped like any normal light. It looked almost like something breathing. Curious, I turned onto a thin side path I didn't remember ever seeing. Branches brushed against my sleeves, as if trying to slow me gently. The glow brightened as I walked, never harsh, just steady. By the time I stepped into a small clearing, the shape of glass and metal rose ahead of me. The greenhouse looked ancient and half forgotten, wrapped in vines that climbed its rusted frame. Some glass panes were cracked, others missing, letting leaves spill outward through the gaps. The glow I'd seen came from inside, but it didn't have a single source. The whole interior seemed to give off a gentle light of its own. Nothing bright, just enough to outline shapes and shadows. I paused at the edge of the clearing and listened. No voices, no machinery, only a faint rustle, like slow movement, with no breeze at all. High above, perched on the broken peak of the roof, an owl sat completely still. It didn't fly away when I stepped closer. It simply watched me, steady and calm as if I was expected. The greenhouse door was half open, pinned in place by vines woven through the handle. I eased my hand between the leaves and pushed. The door creaked softly, the sound shaped more by age than resistance. Warm air drifted out to meet me, smelling of wet soil and something faintly sweet I couldn't name. It felt like stepping into a different season. Inside, the light came from clusters of pale fungi on beams, from tiny bulbs tucked beneath leaves, and from jars filled with foggy, glowing liquid. None of it looked wired or connected to anything. The light simply existed, soft and content. I stepped onto a narrow stone path, winding between raised beds and low tables, careful not to brush against anything unfamiliar. Near the entrance, the plants looked almost ordinary at first glance. Broad leaves, thin stems, curling vines. But each one had something unusual about it. A shimmer along an edge, a color too deep to be natural, or the way a leaf slowly turned toward the light as if aware of me. Farther inside, the plants grew stranger. Bell-shaped flowers held drops of glowing liquid that pulsed like tiny heartbeats. Near them, A thick patch of moss rose and fell with slow breaths that didn't match any breeze. I crouched and listened, expecting silence. Instead, I heard faint sounds, soft trickles, tiny crackles, the gentle hum of something growing. Not a voice exactly, but not random either. It felt like the greenhouse whispering to itself. In one corner, a shallow clay basin held a miniature forest. Small ferns curled upward beside pebble-sized mushrooms glowing blue at their edges. A tiny pool reflected faint light, rippling once when something slipped beneath the water. I leaned closer but saw nothing but roots and reflections. Maybe eyes had been there a moment before, maybe not. Whatever lived there was shy enough to keep its secrets. I stood again and followed the path deeper inside, where the plants grew taller and the light dimmed to a warm, quiet glow. I moved deeper along the winding path, letting the warm greenhouse air settle around me. The light shifted as I walked, softening near the ground and gathering in faint clusters above me like drifting sparks caught among the leaves. The air carried a mix of scents I couldn't separate: soil, greenery, and something sweet that lingered at the edge of recognition. I brushed my hand against the thin vine, and it curled ever so slightly toward the touch, slow and gentle, as if waking from a nap. I took my time moving forward, careful not to disturb anything that seemed busy with its own quiet work. Every few steps, the path curved around thick clusters of plants that had long since grown past the boundaries of their beds. The greenhouse overhead creaked softly, the old metal adjusting itself with sounds softened by the humidity. I looked up, half expecting the owl again, but saw only shadows of leaves pressed against the glass. Somewhere nearby, a slow drip of water echoed into a shallow dish. I followed the sound to a long wooden table covered in jars, pots, and trays. A cracked pipe overhead leaked droplets into a small basin, and around it grew plants made of thin, translucent petals. The petals glowed faintly, shifting from pale green to soft blue with each falling drop. I leaned closer and noticed tiny sparks drifting inside the petals like grains of floating light. When I exhaled, the petals trembled lightly, as if reacting to my breath. A sealed glass jar sat beside them, filled with a slow swirl of foggy light. It drifted in loops that stretched and folded back into themselves, never quite settling. I placed my hand against the jar and felt a soft warmth pulse beneath the glass. Then the warmth faded, retreating inward like a sigh. Farther down the table, a cluster of ribbon-like leaves grew from shallow bowls of dark soil. The leaves twisted and wove together, curling upward as though they were stretching. Small round buds opened and closed at unpredictable moments, each revealing a soft glow before hiding it again. I watched one open, linger, and then fold inward until it became a smooth orb once again. It reminded me of someone waking halfway from sleep, only to drift back under. The ground near these plants felt slightly warm, so I knelt and placed my hand on a stone. A faint hum vibrated beneath my palm like a quiet purr. When I pulled my hand away, the stone cooled, returning to its natural stillness. Ahead, a wooden archway framed a narrow passage covered in soft vines. Tiny glimmers of light dotted the vines like stars pinned to a living curtain. As I stepped through, the lights brightened, then slowly dimmed again. The corridor was warmer than the rest of the greenhouse, filled with the scent of dense, damp soil. Small shapes darted between the plants, quick flickers of motion I only caught from the corners of my eyes. They made soft, clicking sounds, gentle and rhythmic, before disappearing again. Whatever they were, they seemed more curious than afraid. The passage opened into a round chamber at the heart of the greenhouse. Above me, cracked glass curved into a high dome, holding back the night sky with a soft glow. In the center of the room grew a tall, pale trunk, smooth like polished wood. Its branches stretched wide, holding clusters of shimmering leaves that shifted color in slow waves. A tiny flutter among the branches made the leaves tremble. I caught a glimpse of a small, glowing creature slipping between them, leaving a faint trail of glimmering dust. The air around the trunk felt warm and calm, like the greenhouse breathed from this very spot. I stood still for a while, letting the warmth settle into my shoulders, thinking the plant might show me more if I stayed quiet enough. I stood beneath the tall central plant for a long moment before wandering toward another part of the chamber. The air felt warmer here, filled with the layered scents of soil and green stems, and something faintly sweet that drifted in and out like a small memory trying to surface. A soft rustle moved along the leaves overhead, subtle enough that I couldn't tell if it came from the glowing creature or from the plant shifting under its own quiet impulses. I let the sound fade and stepped along a curving section of the path lined with moss and low foliage. The moss glowed in a scattered pattern across the ground, small lights blinking in their own rhythms. When I touched one of the mounds, it compressed slowly under my hand, warm underneath the surface. Tiny specks of light brightened where my fingers had rested, then dimmed again as I pulled away. Near the edge of the chamber sat a grouping of shallow stone basins filled with miniature landscapes. The first held thin, needle-like trees no taller than my palm, their tips glowing with pale blue points. Tiny drifting motes of light moved between them like fireflies that had forgotten how to rise. In the next basin, a small rocky slope supported patches of moss and half-open flowers. The petals stayed on the verge of opening, pausing just before revealing whatever shape they held inside. Something small slipped behind a stone, quick and shy, leaving only a ripple in the moss. I watched for another movement, but the little world settled into stillness again. On a narrow shelf above the basins rested a line of sealed glass terrariums. Each one contained a tiny, self-contained environment, humming with its own quiet rhythm. One was fogged on the inside, condensation tracing glowing streaks down the glass that faded as soon as they reached the soil. Another held a cluster of vines curling around a central stone, the leaves pulsing softly as if following an unspoken signal. The third terrarium contained a pool of water no bigger than my hand, with faint light swirling beneath its surface in slow circles. Nothing inside moved in a way I could see, yet the terrariums felt alive, like small dreams the greenhouse kept tucked neatly on a shelf. I continued along the path until I reached a long wooden table scattered with tools, dried petals, and a few glass vials. One vial caught my attention, a small tube containing a floating swirl of golden light that drifted lazily from end to end. When I tilted the vial slightly, the swirl stretched into a ribbon before gathering back into a small, glowing orb. Its warmth pressed gently through the glass, subtle but steady. I set it down and watched the swirl settle into a resting shape. Beside it lay a wooden box filled with dried seeds of all shapes and sizes. Each seed glowed with a muted silver sheen, some round and smooth, others ridged and elongated. When I touched one, a faint vibration traveled through my fingertip like a miniature heartbeat. I followed the path deeper and entered a small alcove where tall grass grew in a contained patch. The blade stood upright and shimmering, responding to sound more than movement. I hummed a gentle note, and the grass bent toward me, swaying in slow waves that matched the pitch. When I shifted the note, the blades flowed in a different pattern, weaving like water stirred by a fingertip. I let the sound fade, and the grass settled back into stillness, as if satisfied with the brief exchange. Back in the central chamber, the tall plant stood quietly, its leaves dimming and brightening in slow cycles. The glowing creature flickered briefly between the branches, then vanished deeper into the foliage. Warm air drifted around me again, carrying a sense of unhurried time. Above, the owl shifted and blinked, its calm gaze following my movements. Nothing in the greenhouse hurried or paused for me. Everything simply continued, steady and content. I stood there quietly, letting the soft rhythm of the place settle around me before moving on. I stepped away from the tall central plant and followed a winding path toward a quieter corner of the greenhouse. The light softened as I walked, dimming into gentle blues and greens that shifted across the leaves. The plants here rustled in a slow, thoughtful way, adjusting themselves as though noticing my presence. Small pulses of light flickered along the ground, scattered like sleepy fireflies resting in the moss. Each pulse followed its own rhythm, creating a constellation that drifted lazily across the floor. I paused, watching the tiny lights fade and brighten, then moved deeper into the chamber. I reached an archway draped with velvety leaves that held beads of moisture along their undersides. When I brushed the leaves aside, cool droplets slid down my fingers, and the room beyond grew clearer. The air there was stiller than the rest of the greenhouse, almost like sound had trouble finding a place to settle. A wooden bench sat against one wall, coated in dust except for a small clean patch, as though someone had sat there not long ago. Beside it, an old watering can leaned against the leg of a planter. The metal was rusted, but when I lifted it, I felt a faint slosh inside. I set it gently back down and listened to the soft tap of metal against wood, a sound that echoed longer than it should have. On the opposite wall stood an old chalkboard propped on a crooked frame. Smudged drawings covered the surface, sketches of roots, leaves, and symbols I couldn't decipher. Most of the chalk marks were blurred with age, but a trail of tiny footprints crossed the lower part of the board, stepping through the dust. The footprints led off the edge of the frame and disappeared beneath a cluster of plants with thick, glossy leaves. I crouched to look beneath them, but whatever creature had left the marks was long gone. The leaves shifted lightly as I leaned closer, rustling like a soft exhale. The sense of small lives moving unseen made the room feel both inhabited and peaceful. A narrow table sat in the center, scattered with tools and bits of dried plant matter. Among them were a few small vials filled with faintly glowing liquids. One vial held a swirl of warm golden light that drifted lazily within the glass. When I tilted it, The swirl stretched like a ribbon before curling back into a small orb. It pressed a gentle warmth into my palm before I set it back down. Next to it, a wooden box held dried seeds of varying shapes, some perfectly round, others ridged or elongated. Each one glowed with a muted silver tone, delicate and steady. I touched one lightly and felt a tiny vibration, almost like a heartbeat waiting for the right moment to wake. In the far corner of the room, a square patch of tall grass grew neatly within a wooden frame. The blades shimmered faintly, reacting more to sound than movement. I hummed a slow note under my breath, and the grass swayed toward me, bending in soft waves that followed the pitch. I shifted the tone, and the grass responded again, flowing in a new pattern like water stirred by a fingertip. When I stopped humming, the blades returned to their upright stillness, as if drifting back into a quiet rest. The interaction felt small and gentle, an exchange between two things sharing the same moment. I stepped back through the archway and returned to the main chamber. The warm air welcomed me once more, carrying the layered scents of the greenhouse like a soft blanket. The central trunk rose ahead, its leaves dimming and brightening in slow waves. In the rafters above, the owl shifted, settling into a new position and blinking slowly in my direction. Nothing in the greenhouse hurried or paused for me. Everything simply continued, calm and steady, letting me walk through without needing anything in return. I stood quietly in the warm glow, letting the air settle around me before turning toward the next winding path. I walked slowly back toward the central chamber, letting the warm air settle around me again. The tall trunk at the heart of the greenhouse stood quietly, its branches shifting with a slow, thoughtful motion. A cluster of leaves shimmered and unfurled as I approached, changing from a muted green to a soft gold before settling into their resting color. It reminded me of the way the sky brightens during the first light of morning, except here the light came from the plant itself. I rested my hand gently against the bark. Its surface was smooth and warm, pulsing once beneath my palm like a deep, slow heartbeat. A faint rustle stirred above me, and I saw the small glowing creature slip through the leaves, its body flickering like a drifting ember. It paused long enough for me to see the delicate curve of its wings before disappearing again into the foliage. The warmth beneath my hand faded, leaving nothing but calm stillness. I followed a narrow path leading away from the trunk and into a dim corner where the glass ceiling had cracked wide. Moonlight filtered through the broken panel in thin silver beams, casting faint shimmering lines across the plants below. Beneath the crack, tall spiraling stems grew in loose patterns, their surfaces dotted with tiny glowing beads of moisture. The beads shifted slightly as I stepped closer, tilting toward the warmth of my presence. Each spiral moved with a slow grace like dancers frozen mid-step. For a moment, I watched them sway gently, each motion small and deliberate, shaped by rhythms I couldn't fully understand. A soft creak behind me made me glance back, but it was only the greenhouse settling under the weight of the night. Farther along, the path dipped into a shallow space filled with still water. The pool stretched from wall to wall, its surface smooth and reflective as polished glass. Faint threads of light wove beneath the water like glowing roots drifting in slow currents. I knelt and dipped my fingers gently into the pool. I expected cold, but the water held a warm, velvety heat that spread through my hand. Something brushed lightly against my fingertip, soft, feather-like, or maybe just a gentle swirl of current. I stayed still, letting the warmth linger, feeling the calm seep through my palm and into my chest. When I finally stood again, the greenhouse felt quieter, almost as if it were settling into its own version of sleep. The lights along the plants dimmed in slow waves, and the glowing buds closed their petals like lanterns being softly tucked away. I walked back toward the entrance, passing the familiar shapes of moss beds, terrariums, and curling vines. The warm air drifted around me in a slow exhale, as if acknowledging that it was time for me to go. The faint hum of growth softened into a steady, peaceful whisper. Above me, the owl shifted on its perch, blinking once in my direction. It didn't seem surprised I was leaving, only watchful, as though seeing me off. At the doorway, I paused and took one last look inside. The greenhouse glowed softly in its own private way, its light pooling in corners and drifting through leaves, calm and unhurried. Nothing inside tried to follow me or hold on. It simply remained what it had always been, a quiet world folded inside another one. I stepped outside, easing the door closed until the vines settled neatly back into place. Even after the door clicked shut, I had the feeling the greenhouse would continue on just the same, growing at its own steady pace under the watchful eyes of the night. So here is where the story ends. You can let go of the greenhouse now. Let it drift into the quiet places where dreams begin to take shape. Let your breath slow a little more, and let the warmth of the night settle around you. There's nothing left you need to follow. Nothing left you need to do. Just the soft drift of your mind unwinding. If sleep is close, let it move in gently. And if you're still awake, there's no rush at all. The night will hold you while you drift a little deeper. The story is finished, but your rest can continue.